everyone. My name is Rachel, and I am the founder and story strategist of Eco-Anxious Stories. I'm so pleased to be here today with my old friend, Kayla Matter. Kayla and I went to high school together. Through the journey of our lives, we've stayed in touch online and more recently have been in touch around the issues and projects and community building that we both are up to. And so we arranged for this cool conversation today to kind of see what eco-anxiety means in our stories, in our careers, in our families. And I can't wait to hear Kayla's perspective on this because she wears a lot of different hats, but she's a really excellent communicator and really gives you a great sense of her story and everything that she posts through her platforms. So I'm excited to see where eco-anxiety shows up in your life and in your experience, and ask you a bit more about that story and what we might be able to learn from it. So thanks for coming. Your perspective as a parent and all of the ways that you see the gaps in support for parents, how does that sort of crash into your focus on social issues and the kind of like high stakes things that we really do need to focus on as a society and as a community, not just as individuals or families? How do you balance that?
I don't. I feel like I'm in my space or online or whatever. I just feel very chaotic. Whatever seems, whatever I'm feeling in the moment, and it comes up, and that's the blessing and the curse, I guess, of being online all the time, is that you can consume so much information. And so whatever you're feeling is important at any given time, you can just sink your teeth into whatever you want to learn about. And that's always been a huge part of my personality, is that I'm constantly trying to learn everything. And so it's, I do feel that it's very chaotic, my bouncing back and forth between all these different things, but it's also kind of what makes up my life and my personality. It affects our family, a lot of the things that I talk about frequently and learn about. And then my work also brings out different things, and it affects the people that I work with. So I speak on it. And then they all kind of intertwine, right? Like, you can't have one without the other. All of these different social issues or environmental issues, they're all impacting each other at all the same time. So you kind of have to look at everything intersectionally.
What does that mean to you, intersectionality?
Just the layers, the crossing over of all of these different issues. And even just looking at people individually, they're not one dimensional. There's a million different parts that make them who they are, and a million different things that affect them in their lives. So that intersection, I guess.
Yeah, those overlaps of those layers. I think that's a really good way to put it. You know, whether you're talking about ecological justice or climate change, those they're so intertwined with all of those social justice issues and all of those intersectional layers, whether we're talking about racism or gender inequity or disability, or any other kind of systemic oppression. There's ways that impacts our feeling of powerlessness or powerfulness, but also at the degree to which these climate impacts actually affect our health and our bodies and our spaces too. So there's a lot going on there. And I was excited to talk to you because I see you online doing that work really regularly, like connecting those dots and helping people see, why does racism matter as a parent? Why does, public health matter to a population? Why are these issues like colonization or capitalism, working against our ability to support each other and care for each other? And so I'm curious where eco-anxiety fits in that big landscape for you. Is that a feeling or a word that resonates with you?
Yeah, I think climate change is something that I'm not super well versed in, but obviously kind of picking apart information as it comes to me, it is a concern. I worry about it. I try and make changes with, like, our family tries to do what we can, and that's kind of our small role, but it is hard not to feel so small in such a big problem. I think that's where the anxiety comes in, right? Is you know that you can only do so much, but at the same time, you understand the massive repercussions that are going to happen if we don't do something quickly. Trying not to get too wrapped up in this like very doomy, gloomy thought process, but obviously it is there. I think for me too, it's hard. When I start to think about it and how it reflects or impacts what I do and what I think about constantly is that intersectionality between all of these issues, and almost a chicken or the egg process where part of me feels, if basic human needs aren't met in these other things, in these other realms, and colonization, like you're talking about, if you don't have clean drinking water, then are you really going to be worried about climate change? But at the same time, climate change affects your ability to have these basic needs. So as much as you can maybe want to shelf it for other issues, you can't. It's all connected, and it's all very important and needing our attention. So I guess it's probably just trying to work on how to weave it in to everything that you're doing. I don't have any real good answers, but that's what comes up for me when I think about it.
I totally agree. Yeah. When I was doing my master's, I was looking at this question of like, if we get over this idea of like, not believing in climate change or not thinking it matters, like most people I talk to and a lot of people who share most of my values is more in the camp of like, this is a big deal and I don't really know what to do about it. Not just like, are you an expert in this, or could you tell me everything there is to know about climate change, but actually just saying, this actually impacts things that already matter to me. And this actually like is going to make things I care about worse, or like this is going to limit opportunities. That framing of like a relationship with climate change, that it's weaving into your life, that it's kind of touching these things that already are our core values, rather than thinking like, man, I got to do some reading and become an expert on this before I could even start to speak about this, or before I could even identify it as a problem. That becomes a real barrier to us like collectively being able to say like, this is kind of a big deal, because none of us feel like an expert, but we all know it matters.
Right. And that also plays into the like hopelessness kind of, if you know you won't become an expert, then why bother kind of thing. And that's just not productive thinking.
Yeah. If we can transform that to be more about like, what are you doing? What sphere of influence do you have? Like, what role are you playing? What already does matter to you? And where's that like link to ecological destruction, or where's that link to all of these intersectional issues that connect to that? I feel like that's an easier ask of people than to sort of like become an expert in something that you didn't go to school for. If we know the world that we want to build is more equitable, is more caring, is more supportive, is more conscientious of these intersections, then building that world like is obviously part of the Act 3, like is obviously part of where we're headed. But it's hard sometimes when it feels like super overwhelming to start opening the door to how everything connects.
Right. And I think lately I've just taken a perspective that just having the conversation is enough too. It does impact your mood and your thought process and your ability to really enjoy things sometimes when there's this heaviness. But I think that's our responsibility as people, to care about each other. And if you lose that, or if you turn away from it, then what are we really doing here?
Your role as a doula, which I think is a postpartum doula specifically, we anticipate that, with great transition comes an added need for care and support that we can wrap around someone. So I'd love to hear a little bit more just about what you love about that job. And maybe we could draw some linkages to this experience of eco-anxiety and how we can anticipate some challenge and some need to wrap people with support to actually kind of move through that challenging time.
Just to give you an idea of what that looks like. So it's a support person for if you're a birth doula, during pregnancy and labor and delivery and shortly afterwards and postpartum. Like what I do is providing that support after baby is born in the home, typically, whether it's during the day or during the nighttime. And it's just kind of anything that's needed. So, tidying up around the house or providing meals or help with breastfeeding or mental health or, really baby care, anything very general, just whatever is needed. I think what I love the most about it is that I feel it fills some of a gap that's there postpartum. In our society, it's very much the pregnant person is very doted on and cared about and held up in respect and all of that. And then once baby is out, they're kind of left behind. So it's then all about baby, and the birthing person is left to recover, often on their own and with not too much interest in them. So I think having a postpartum doula there to support and kind of move through that challenging time that most people don't even expect. Everyone knows that labor and delivery is a challenge. It's a real feat and it's painful and all of these things. So many people do plan for that, but they expect that once baby is home, they will know what to do, and it'll be easy, and maybe they won't sleep quite as much, but it will come naturally. And that's often not the case. So I think it's nice to have that support and fill the gap. And I guess as far as providing support through transition, most of my job is typically being a companion, being there, being a trustworthy person, who's non-judgmental, and just like someone that they're going to know is going to show up. Reliable, trustworthy, non-judgmental. That's basically the key to being there and being a supporter and helping people through transitions. I think the rest is just obviously some knowledge and training, but the rest is just a bonus. I think people need supporters who they just know will be there and who won't judge them. So I think as far as moving through some eco anxiety and that discomfort, that's basically what it's about. Showing up, having the conversations, not being judgmental, and let people feel comfortable that they can change.
That experience of maybe learning or waking up to, more social issues or ecological issues, and having this sort of like more dramatic, let's say, birth of a new idea or a new perspective on the world. And then you just sort of feel like you're expected to know exactly what to do with that. It can be a lifetime of those, rebirths, I guess. But to not account for the support that's needed and the non-judgmental companionship that's needed and the finding your role that's needed, I think makes you just feel kind of powerless and like you're failing. If we can come up with ways to think of supporting each other through this great transition, this generational transition, that's when the possibility and the hope sort of comes alive for me. I think it's hard to have hope outside of that.
I think another great parallel that I just thought of too is this sense of like it lies with judgment too, but this need for an open mind and empowerment also. I feel like in postpartum, there's all these societal, what people think society wants from them or what they should be doing, what they, the standard that they think that they're held to as a new parent, what like how they should be sleeping with babies, how baby should be sleeping, how baby should be eating, how they should be parenting on all of these fronts. Being able to ask questions of those shoulds and try and relate to what does that look like for me? Does that make sense for me? And our family, like, does that make sense for our family? And then doing some research and looking into the other options. I think just always knowing your options and always asking the questions and being comfortable with making a decision that might go against the norm and questioning the status quo is another big kind of parallel there. Obviously, having support through that is important, but also having someone maybe to open your eyes to new information and ways that you can question things and then sit back and feel the ability and the empowerment to make these decisions for yourself, regardless of what those around you in society might expect. Because in the postpartum period, that's huge. There's so many issues that our families, my clients, need to make decisions that's best for their family. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
I know postpartum and doula work as a whole and all birth work like needs more support, like at a public policy level. And in the same way, people who are working on the front lines of climate issues and social issues also can be like, we can structure our world, I guess is what I'm saying. And we can design things to actually support this kind of stuff that's working. And that really is important in putting these practices together and working with each other in the absence of that kind of system of support. What message would you have for people who are maybe in the midst of their own transition, whether that's like a life transition or a transition in how they're thinking and seeing the world? What sort of message would you have for them?
Obviously, people need to make that decision on their own. However, like if you're not going to make a change for the better now, or speak out about against something that you think is wrong now, then who's going to do it, or when are you going to do it? So if there's like an urge to do something for the better, then you may as well just get it over with. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be maybe a little awkward. You might like stumble through it, but I would always say that would be better than staying stagnant or staying in a place that you know isn't what's best for you or best for your community or society.
And I think that's a really important message, especially on eco-anxiety and climate change, just because I think most of us don't feel like it's our wheelhouse. Having that permission to sort of start talking about climate change or start talking just about your anxiety about it is a nice way to kind of normalize the fact that this is only kind of getting more intense and more scary. I think it's really crucial that we can kind of ask ourselves that question. Like, if you're not going to start talking about it now, like, when do you think this might be an issue for you? And maybe when do you think it'll be an issue for your kids? Like, are you prepared to sort of help them through this transition as well of understanding? And if not, no shame, but like, what do you need in hand to do that? And let's start equipping each other.
I think just normalizing talking about any issue really, but talking about climate change and the fears around it is so huge. Like what you're doing and having these conversations, letting people say how they feel, because, probably the majority of people feel the same or feel something, some sort of fear around it. And so if someone's speaking out about it, maybe they'll feel more inclined to also have those conversations and speak out about it.
Thanks for being here, Kayla.
Thank you for having me.